I'm Leo Garcia. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm going to be going over some right-hand fingerings for scales. So here are the patterns that we want to work on. First, index, middle, and middle, index. Then we want to work on these two guys, middle and ring finger, or middle and A, MA, and AM. After those, probably those are the most important ones because every other pattern really involves those fingers, unless you're doing scales with the thumb, which we'll talk about in a moment. So we have these two, and then we're going to do index and ring finger, IA, and AI, obviously. And then we're going to do thumb and index, PI. We can do PM. I know wonderful guitarists that use PMI for scales. We're also going to do AMI, IMA, and Segovia in his scale book does IMAM, which honestly I never practice, but maybe I should. So I'm going to go through each one of these, if I can remember them all, and give you a few pointers as they come to me as I do it. So first step, just make sure you're in a good sitting position, and when you're practicing them, you want to have your metronome on. I like to start off on the treble strings, on strings 1, 2, and 3, only because I don't want to wear out my nails. But I often practice on the low strings too and do 2-octave scales. So let's just start off with a major scale. And we're going to start off free stroke, and we're going to do index and middle. So this whole video is going to be devoted to fingerings for free stroke. Maybe we'll talk about rest stroke in a different video. So we start off index and middle. So that's going to feel slightly different when you do middle to index. So now we're going to do middle index. Next one, middle to ring finger, MA. And then A to M. All right, next one, I to A. And then A to I. All right, so we've gone through all the pairs. Now we're going to bring in thumb and index, and then we'll go on to 3-note or 3-finger scales. So thumb, P to I, P-I. practicing scales with a thumb, you want to make sure your thumb stroke doesn't overwhelm, like the heaviness of the thumb doesn't overwhelm the hand and move you out of alignment. So you have to play, maybe think about playing thumb a little softer. I like doing thumb and middle, so PM. And maybe with the thumb you would practice on maybe lower strings. So on all of these scales, what I'm doing to get my fingers to feel close to the strings is that I actually start each stroke on the string. I'm not going to always do this, but it's one way to practice when you're starting out or you're warming up. So you place the thumb on the string, and then you'll notice for the next note, my index touches the string and waits. So it plants really lightly. You do it halfway between the beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and when you speed it up, you're doing so each finger is actually on the string before it executes the stroke. You can get more refined with that. You can choose to not do it, to play very legato, which is very difficult. Or you can, choose to do both in a practice session. But mostly you want to be secure when you practice scales and get used to, by putting the finger down, you get really a good sense of the proximity of the string, and also plant. If you're planting, you're going to be a little bit more secure when you go through your scales. All right, so we left off, we did PI, PM. Now we're going to go on to 3-finger scales, AMI, IMA. So I'll start with AMI. Okay. And then IMA. So again, when you're practicing, if you're at a beginning level, you probably want to spend tons of time doing index and middle and index. Just going back, doing, here I gave one scale with one fingering, but in reality I practice, maybe 2 or 3 patterns every time I sit down to do scales, and I'll do each pattern at different speeds. Maybe even with accents, which we can talk about in a different video, rhythms, etc. But most importantly, I'm just getting used to this feeling, and I'm building this alternation feeling in my right hand to be extremely consistent. And index and middle, honestly, you're going to use that maybe 80% of the time. A and M, you want to definitely do those because those will balance out your hand. And, with arpeggios, it's really important. And also bringing A in sometimes really helps to ensure that your string crossing is or makes sense when you're thinking about your right hand fingerings. So those are the basic right hand fingerings that you want to be doing. Again, if you're a beginner, spend a lot of time with a metronome doing index, middle, and middle index, and middle and A and M. And after you get really good at those, both in free stroke and rest stroke, then you can start doing I and A, which honestly I really love because the fingers are same length, and P and I. After that, you can start doing three finger and more complex patterns if that's what you like to do. I have a friend who actually does PAMI scales, and most scales AMI, which I think is pretty cool if you can work on that and get that to be really proficient. It really lightens the load of the right hand. But I also know really great players that use I and M faster than most people use AMI. So you just have to get good at the basics and start expanding from there. Anyway, I hope this helps. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope that that helps you reach your goals. Next time we'll talk about, I don't know what we'll talk about next time, but I'll have a good one for you. See you later.